one in my town never dares to look outside when the sky turns crimson. Not even for a second. Not even out of curiosity. People lock their doors, shut their blinds, turn off every light, and pretend nothing is happening, because whatever moves beneath that red sky isn't meant to be seen by human eyes. But last night something went wrong. Something happened that the town wasn't prepared for. And the truth is, none of us ever were. This ritual, this yearly bleeding of the sky, didn't start with us. My parents always said it was older than the houses, older than the church, older than the streets we walk on. It was here before the town was built, my mother once whispered. Before we were even a story. No one knows when it began. No one knows what it wants. They only know the omens, 3 signs, and then the night begins. The first omen arrives when the sun hasn't even fully set, when the crows begin circling over the center of town. They don't behave like birds. They behave like priests. Silent at first, then erupting into a chorus that sounds almost ceremonial-like. They're announcing the arrival of something ancient. Then, one of them drops dead. Always exactly in the same spot. Always without a mark on its body. The others land around it in a perfect circle, mourning it with relentless rhythmic caws that echo down the streets like a warning we should already understand. That's when the business is shut down, the streets empty, and the lamps glow over a town pretending not to tremble. The second omen comes with the fog. It moves in too fast, too thick, too alive. It doesn't crow, it consumes, and hidden inside that fog is the sound that drives people mad. Something like a horn, but older. Older than language, older than music, older than anything that belongs to our world. If you hear it, even for a second, it stains you. It fills your mind with things that aren't yours. Visions of worlds folded wrong, creatures that never learned how to die, and faces pressed against the fabric of reality begging to be let in. That sound has stolen minds before. Everyone knows it. That's why we all own noise-canceling headphones. That's why every window must be shut tight by sunset. The third omen is the worst. It's midnight when the sky ruptures into a crimson glow, brighter than moonlight, darker than blood. A light appears above the fields, always above the fields, like something enormous is staring down at us through a crack in the sky. That's where the ritual happens, where it has always happened, where no one is supposed to go. But last night, my friend and I did, and we learned why the town hides, why no one speaks, why this ritual was never meant to be witnessed. Because some things don't stay in the sky, some things come down. Josh was the first one to convince me. He always had that spark, the kind of reckless excitement that made danger look like an adventure. Back in school, he used to joke about the ritual like it was some spooky campfire tale meant to scare tourists. But last night, when the crows formed their circle downtown, I could tell the joke finally died in him. Everyone else ran indoors. Shops slammed their shutters. Cars pulled into driveways, doors locked in unison. But Josh stood beside me in the open street, staring at the ritual's first omen with a look I'd never seen on him before. Fascination. "We're doing it tonight," he whispered. That should have been the moment I walked away. That should have been the moment I remembered that kids like us don't survive stories like this. But something inside me, curiosity, fear, defiance, answered him before my brain could stop me. "Yeah," I said, "we are." The fog rolled in just minutes after sunset, not drifting, not swirling, falling. Like a silent avalanche of gray swallowing the streetlights one by one. We hurried home, pretending everything was normal, pretending our parents couldn't see the panic shaking our hands or the adrenaline burning our nerves. They didn't notice. Everyone was too busy sealing their homes like the world outside had become poisonous. At exactly 11:30, the horns began. Even through thick headphones, the vibrations sank into our bones. The windows trembled. The floorboards creaked. My teeth hurt like someone was dragging metal across them. Somewhere across the neighborhood, a dog started barking, then yelped and fell silent. I waited 10 minutes after the horns ended, just like the adults always warned us to do. Superstition, they said, give the night time to settle. But the truth is, the night never settles on ritual night. When I snuck out into the backyard, Josh was already there, hood up, face pale. For the first time since we were kids, he wasn't smiling. "You ready?" he asked, voice strained. "Not at all," I answered. "Let's go." We crossed into the woods behind my house, the trees looming like ancient guardians watching us trespass into forbidden hours. The earth felt different under our feet, too soft in some places, too hard in others. Shadows clung to the ground like they were choosing not to rise. And then, the world went silent. Not quiet, silent. No crickets, no wind, no rustling leaves, no distant hum of houses or cars. Just complete and unnatural stillness. Josh stopped walking. "Dude, something's wrong." He didn't need to tell me. My breath felt like smoke trapped in my lungs. My heartbeat sounded too loud in my ears. We crouched when we saw it, a massive silhouette at the edge of the woods, 7 feet tall, fur bristling like quills, eyes glowing with an unnatural red light. It wasn't walking, it was sniffing the air. Searching, then it howled, a sound not meant for this world, a sound that cracked the night in half. And moments later, another creature followed behind it, and another, not human, not animal, something in between, or something older, all running toward the open fields, all called by the crimson sky. Josh grabbed my sleeve, shaking. "We shouldn't be here," he whispered, but midnight was seconds away, and we were already too deep to turn back. We stayed crouched long after the creatures thundered past, long enough that my legs started to shake, long enough that the cold dirt began seeping through my jeans, long enough for me to wonder if we'd die right there without ever seeing the ritual we'd risked everything for. Josh nudged me. His breath trembled against the back of my neck. "They're gone, right?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know. Because the silence after their stampede wasn't relief, it was warning, like the woods were holding their breath with us. A sudden snap cracked behind us, a twig breaking. Josh jerked around so fast he nearly fell. Nothing there, just fog creeping around the trunks, so thick it looked carved from stone. "Let's just move," I whispered. We pushed forward slowly, every branch and patch of wet leaves sounding impossibly loud under our feet. The wood seemed deeper than usual, darker, like the night stretched itself to stop us from reaching the fields. Somewhere in the distance, something groaned. Not a creature, not wind, something tired. The kind of sound bones make in old houses, or the earth makes when something heavy wakes beneath it. Josh grabbed my arm again. "Mark, look." The fog behind us rippled, not swayed, rippled, like a shape moved through it without disturbing the air around it. I didn't want to know what it was. I didn't want to believe the ritual had more guardians than the creatures we already saw. "We're almost out," I whispered, even though I didn't know if that was true. We crawled through the last of the brush and finally reached the open grass fields, and immediately I understood why the town never spoke of what happened out here. Because this wasn't a ritual, it was a communion, a gathering, a transaction. At first, I thought the Crimson Hoods were just shadows, dozens of people kneeling in a perfect circle around a wooden altar shaped like a cross between a shrine and a sacrificial table. The crimson fabric on their shoulders glowed faintly in the unnatural moonlight like blood reflecting fire. And then I saw their faces. The mayor, our priest, the librarian, 2 cops, my history teacher, all from town, all chanting something the human throat shouldn't be able to shape. Words heavy enough to bend the air around them. Josh froze beside me. "Dude," he mouthed, "they're all from school." The chanting grew louder, vibrating through the ground, rattling my bones. On the altar, a man lay trembling arms stretched toward the sky like he was praying for someone to stop this. But no one did. A cultist stepped forward, pulled back his hood, and, "Is that Mr. Avery?" I whispered. Josh nodded. "Our English teacher." They dragged the trembling man, someone we didn't recognize, to the center. Dozens of crimson blades rose in perfect synchronicity. Josh covered his mouth to keep from screaming. The blades fell, and the sky tore open. A thin crack of red light split across the heavens like the world had been stabbed. The air sucked inward, cold and violent, as if something immense was inhaling from the other side. Then the portal opened, silent, swirling, wrong. Something massive stepped through, and every instinct in my body told me to run. The thing that stepped through the crimson tear in the sky did not belong in any world shaped by human hands. At first, all we saw was the silhouette, a towering outline that blocked out half the stars. its wings unfolding with a leathery crack that vibrated through the grass. Each wing was veined with pulsing red light, like magma beneath skin. Then it leaned forward into the moonlight, and every hair on my body stood straight up. A giant crow, but not really. Its feathers looked carved from obsidian, and each one shimmered like wet stone. Its beak was long and jagged, lined on the inside with rows of needle-sharp teeth, and its eyes, two enormous rubies, each swirling with something alive inside. Josh grabbed my sleeve and squeezed so hard my fingers went numb. The Crimson God wasn't just looking at the cultists, it was counting them. One by one, its gaze slid across their bowed bodies. When it reached the altar where the lifeless sacrifice lay, it inhaled deeply. 1,000 voices screamed at once, not from its mouth, from inside the air, like the world itself was in pain. The cultists chanted louder, almost desperately, their hands raised in supplication. "Hail the Crimson God! Hail the Keeper of the Rift! Grant us another year of mercy!" The creature lowered its head and devoured the body in one bite. Bones snapped like twigs. The crunch echoed across the field. Josh gagged beside me. I slapped my hand over his mouth, terrified they'd hear even a breath. But the Crimson God wasn't done. It spoke, not out loud. The words exploded directly inside our skulls. One is not enough. The cultists froze. The priest shook his head violently. "Great One, we brought the tithe! We followed the omens." The giant crow crouched, wings flexing, casting a monstrous shadow that swallowed the entire altar. "One is not enough," it repeated, and the ground quaked from the force of its voice. A ripple moved through the fog behind us. At first, I thought it was the wind. Then the forest erupted. The creatures we'd seen earlier, the ones with glowing eyes, carved bodies, twisted skulls, burst into the clearing, charging toward the cultists with ravenous speed. Screams shredded the night. The librarian went down first, disappearing beneath a mass of limbs and jaws. Blood sprayed into the fog like dark paint. 2 cops tried to run. A beast with 4 faces leapt onto them, tearing through flesh like paper. Our priest managed to get out a single prayer before something taller than a streetlight snapped him in half. Josh whimpered silently beside me. I didn't dare blink. The Crimson God watched silently, almost bored, as the monsters tore through the cultists like they were nothing but food left out for wild dogs. Within seconds, the only survivor was the mayor. He knelt trembling, covered in blood that wasn't his, and raised a shaking hand. "You Great One," he stammered. The town will bring more next year. I promise. Please spare us." "Spare me." The Crimson God lowered its massive head until its beak hovered inches above him. "Serve us well," it whispered, a hurricane trapped inside a breath. The monsters howled, turned, and sprinted back toward the portal. The Crimson God followed. The tear in the sky pulsed, then sealed shut like a wound. Silence crushed the field. Josh and I didn't move, not even when the mayor staggered upright, wiping blood from his face. He stared directly toward the tree line, directly toward us. We ducked behind the tree, breath trapped in our throats. Footsteps approached, slow, measured, human. Then he broke into a sprint, straight toward us. For a second, neither of us moved. We just stared at each other, frozen in a panic so deep it felt carved into our bones. Josh's hand slipped into mine cold, trembling, damp with sweat. The mayor's footsteps crashed through the grass, getting louder, faster. I swallowed hard. "Run," I whispered. We exploded into motion. Branches slapped our faces as we tore into the woods. The forest that had felt eerie earlier now felt alive, reaching for us, closing in, bending around the mayor's pursuit. Every shadow looked like claws, every rustle a warning. Josh tripped on a root. I yanked him up by his hoodie. Behind us, the mayor shouted, "Stop! Stop! Right now!" But it wasn't a normal voice. It cracked, warped, layered like 2 people speaking at once. One human, one not. We sprinted deeper, feet pounding damp soil, breath burning in our chests. Fog swirled low to the ground, wrapping around our ankles like it was trying to pull us down. Mark, where are we going?" Josh gasped. "I don't know, just keep running." A loud crack echoed behind us. He was close, too close. A beam of crimson light flashed between the trees. We ducked, skidding behind a fallen log. The mare's shadow stretched long across the forest floor, distorted and wrong as if something massive was hiding behind his silhouette. Josh's teeth chattered. "He's glowing, Mark, look." I peeked over the log. His eyes weren't human anymore. They burned the same ruby red as the crimson god. He scanned the woods slowly, breathing hard. "Come out," he called. Not a demand, a promise. The shadows behind him twitched. Something else moved with him. Something tall, something that didn't make sound when it walked. Josh tugged on my arm. "He's not alone. He's not." I covered his mouth before he could finish. The mare's head snapped toward our direction. Our hearts stopped. Then, a distant horn blasted across the sky. Not the deafening kind from the ritual. This one was faint, lonely, almost mournful. The mayor flinched at the sound. His body stiffened, like he was listening to some silent instruction. Then he turned and walked away, just like that. No hesitation, no searching, no fury. He just drifted back toward the blood-soaked clearing like a puppet pulled by invisible strings. Josh sagged against me, sobbing quietly. I felt lightheaded, my breaths too shallow, my legs shaking uncontrollably. We waited until the forest swallowed him completely before daring to stand. When we finally stepped out from behind the log, the woods felt different. Still, unnaturally quiet. "Dude, how are we still alive?" Josh whispered. I didn't have an answer. I didn't think one existed. We made our way back through the woods, staying low, moving slow, every sound amplified by fear. Halfway through, the fog began to thin. The crimson glow faded from the sky. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of pine instead of blood. For a moment, I allowed myself to believe we'd made it. But when we reached the edge of the forest, about to step onto the familiar street lit by soft neighborhood lamps, something stopped us cold. All the houses, every single one, had their windows covered with thick curtains. Every porch light was off. Every car was gone. It looked like the entire town had vanished. Josh grabbed my sleeve. "Mark, where is everyone?" My stomach dropped. There was a note taped to the nearest street lamp. One sentence, written in red ink, "W.E. So." A fresh drop of ink slid down the paper. Still wet, still dripping, still warm. Josh took one step back. I took one step forward. Because the second line, barely visible on the bottom, hadn't been there a moment ago. The ink was writing itself. "See you next year." For a long moment, neither of us breathed. The ink on the paper moved, as if something inside the words was still alive, pulsing beneath the surface. Josh clamped a hand over his mouth to keep from screaming. Mark, this isn't real," he whispered, voice cracking open. "It can't be. It can't." But it was real. The cold breeze lifted the corner of the note, revealing a smear of crimson on the metal pole, the same shade as the creature's wings, the same shade that filled the sky. Someone or something had been here minutes ago, watching us, waiting. I forced myself to tear the paper down. Every instinct screamed not to touch it, but leaving it there felt worse, like an open invitation for whatever wrote it to come find us again. "Come on," I whispered. "Stay close." We crept along the sidewalk, moving from shadow to shadow, glancing over our shoulders every few seconds. The world felt wrong, too quiet, too empty, like the town was holding its breath. When we reached Josh's house, all the lights were off, the curtains drawn, the door locked. He banged on it softly at first, then louder. "Mom, Dad, open up, it's me. It's me." No answer, only silence. I tugged his sleeve. "We'll try mine." We sprinted across the yards, our shoes crunching gravel in the kind of stillness that didn't belong in a neighborhood. When we reached my porch, I froze. The door was cracked open. Not enough to invite someone in, just enough to say someone had already come out. "Mom?" I whispered into the darkness. The house swallowed the sound. Josh swallowed hard. "Dude, maybe they're at the shelter or something. Maybe the town has a place they go during the ritual." I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him. Inside, the air felt colder than outside, a metallic cold, the kind that clung to your lungs and made each breath sting. We stepped inside, and I flicked on a flashlight from the drawer. Everything looked untouched. The couch, the table, the TV remote still on the armrest. but the family photo on the wall had fallen face down, as if someone brushed past it in a hurry. I picked it up. The glass was cracked. Josh whispered, "Mark, look at this." He pointed at the floor near the hallway. Footprints, not muddy, not bloody, just faint impressions, like something incredibly heavy had stepped through, bending the hardwood floor but leaving no residue. And they weren't shaped like shoes. A chill crawled up my spine. Before we could move, before we could even think, a low rumble rolled through the house. Not from outside, not from the sky. From under the floorboards, the same sound the creatures made when marching across the grass. Josh grabbed my arm. "We need to go now." We backed toward the door. The rumbling grew louder. The boards beneath our feet vibrated, dust falling from the picture frames. Something was rising. Something was coming up. Then, a single echoing knock from beneath the house. Knock. Josh nearly collapsed. Another knock, this time louder. A deep, deliberate tapping, like someone testing the wood from the wrong side. Then a whisper, so soft I thought I imagined it. "You shouldn't have looked." The floorboards bulged upward. We bolted, out the door, across the yard, down the street, running until our lungs felt like they were tearing open. We didn't stop until we reached the far end of town, the old train station, long abandoned, half swallowed by vines. Only then did Josh gasp, "Mark, what if it followed us?" I didn't answer, because something across the platform caught my eye. A smear of crimson on the bench. Next to it, a feather. Black, long, and still warm. Josh stared at the feather like it was a severed finger. "Mark, that wasn't here before. Tell me it wasn't here before." I wished I could. I wished I could lie and say anything at all to calm him down. But the truth clung to the air like the fog before the horn blasts. Heavy, suffocating, impossible to ignore. "It's following us," I whispered. Or worse, it never left. The old train station around us creaked with the weight of years. The peeling roof rattled in the breeze, and somewhere under the platform something scampered. Too fast, too many legs, too close. Josh backed away from the bench. "Dude, this is messed up." "Why didn't anybody warn us it could follow?" You stopped. "Because we both heard it." The wind shifted, and from somewhere deep in the fog-smothered streets behind us, a sound slithered through the night. A soft chorus of caws, layered, rhythmic, rising and falling like a living chant. Not normal crows, not the omens, something else, something rehearsing. Like the burning-throated choir we heard last night was practicing again. Josh grabbed my sleeve. "We need to go to the police station." "No," I said immediately. "Why not?" "Because every police officer we saw last night was part of it. They were chanting with the others." His mouth opened, closed. Then he sank onto the bench, burying his head in his hands. "So what now? We can't go home. We can't tell anyone. We can't go to the woods. We can't. We need answers," I said, "real ones. And the only place that has them." He looked up at me. "The mayor's office." Josh blinked. "The safe. The documents about the ritual, the omens, everything. If anyone ever broke the rules before, maybe it explains what happens next." Josh didn't argue. Not because he agreed, but because he had nothing left to disagree with. So we made our way across town, keeping to shadows, ducking behind cars and hedges, jumping at every rustle. The crimson feather felt heavier in my pocket with every step, as if it pulsed with a heartbeat that wasn't my own. When we reached the town hall, the building was dark except for a faint glow in the mayor's office upstairs. Josh whispered, "He's awake." "No, he's waiting." We slipped inside through the back door. The inside smelled like old paper and lemon polish, familiar in a way that made everything else feel worse. Like a normal place wearing a mask. The mayor's office was at the end of the hall. A light flickered beneath the door. As we approached, the floor creaked, once, loud enough to freeze my blood. But the door didn't open. I pushed it slowly, and the moment the crack widened, a voice drifted out. "I was expecting you to." Josh grabbed my arm with a gasp. The mayor stood behind his desk, hands folded, expression calm, almost relieved. "You boys looked exhausted," he said quietly. "That's normal. Watching the ritual always takes something out of the viewer." My throat tightened. "You knew we were there." "I knew the moment you stepped onto the field. The ritual marks anyone who witnesses it." Josh stumbled back. "We're marked." The The mayor nodded, and then he said something I will never forget. But being seen by the Crimson God is much worse than seeing him. The lights flickered. Something scraped against the window behind him. Slow, wet, deliberate. A claw, dragging across the glass. Josh let out a strangled gasp, stumbling so far back he nearly tripped over a chair. The mayor didn't even flinch. That, he said softly, is why I begged the town council to strengthen the rules. But tradition is older than authority. Another sickening scrape traveled across the window, like talons testing the glass-curious patient. The mayor stepped toward us, hands raised almost apologetically. You saw the ritual. You heard the chanting. You watched the gate open. He swallowed, and the Crimson God watched you. My lungs froze in my chest. Josh grabbed my sleeve. Mark, we need to go, now. But the mayor blocked a doorway. You can't leave town anymore, he said. Not tonight, not tomorrow, not ever. Anyone marked is bound to this place. If you try to run, he hesitated. Then he looked to the window. Something taller than any human shape shifted behind the glass. A hunched silhouette, winged, crowned with glowing red embers where eyes should be. Josh whispered, trembling. He followed us. No, the mayor corrected quietly. He claimed you. The lights flickered violently, popping overhead. The mayor hissed, covering his ears. He's calling. You need to. A thunderous crack split the air as the window shattered inward. Crimson fog flooded the room like living smoke. A single clawed hand, jet black, stretched thin, jointed, wrong gripped the mayor's shoulder. He didn't scream, didn't fight. He simply bowed his head. Take them in my place, he whispered. Josh grabbed my arm and yanked me toward the door. Ran. We sprinted out into the hallway as the mayor's body was lifted clean off the floor, disappearing into the crimson fog behind us. I didn't look back. Josh didn't either. Not until the horn sounded. Deep, ancient, impossible. It wasn't horn season, it wasn't ritual night. This blast was meant for us. Every window in the building rattled. Ceiling tiles shook loose. The framed pictures lining the hallway fell, glass shattering around our feet. Josh screamed, clutching his ears. It's in my head, Mark, I tease. I dragged him behind a filing cabinet, both of us trembling as the horn grew louder, bending the air. Then, just as suddenly, it stopped. The silence afterward was worse. I pulled Josh toward the exit, forcing my legs to move even though every instinct screamed not to. We burst out into the cool night air, sprinting down the steps, and froze. The fog, the crimson glow, the sky above town, bleeding red. But it's not midnight, Josh whispered. Then we heard footsteps, soft, synchronized, circling us. Not human footsteps. We turned. At least a dozen creatures stood there. Different shapes, different bodies, all glowing somewhere with that impossible crimson light. But every single one of them was staring at us. And then one stepped forward. A small one, barefoot, child-sized, its face lifted. My heart stopped. It was the boy who went missing last year. His eyes hollow, his jaw stitched shut with red wire. Josh whimpered, "No, no, no." The boy reached out toward me, not threatening, not attacking, inviting. And then, every street lamp went out, pitch black. A breath right beside my ear whispered, "You shouldn't have watched." And everything went silent.